Good morning,
Good
everyone. Thank you
morning.
for joining us in our coffee talk for this morning. So today's gonna be mental health in design. Today we have a great panelist for you guys. This is our third of the four-part series. So next Thursday will be our last part of the series. Today, your moderator will be Joanna Castro from Donia Design. And then quick introduction for myself is I'm Matthew Negron. I'm the Morristown City Center Director for IIDA, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. So I am going to hand it over to Joanna to introduce all of our wonderful panelists, and I am going to go into incognito mode, but I am here for any support if needed. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the talk.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
We appreciate it. Good morning. Would you guys like to introduce yourselves today? We can start with Britney.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. My name is Britney Simone. I am the PR manager and A&D sales for Transwall based out of Westchester, Pennsylvania, but I'm actually seated in New York City right now. So hello from the East Coast, rainy. I have a kind of weaving background into the design industry. I started studying musical theater. So I have a BFA in musical theater, and then worked my way into, I was doing properties design and set design for the theater community. Then moved into home interiors, specifically furnishings and textiles, and now I do corporate interiors. So, and then we're also doing a course this year with Transwall that specifically focuses on mental health and design, creating and designing inclusive work environments, especially for those with neurodiversity. So I'm thrilled to be here today. Thank you.
Thanks, Brittany. David, you want to go next?
Sure. Hello, all. My name is David Brothers. I'm an architect by training, but I currently coordinate the interior design program at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and have done since its inception about 12 or 13 years ago. So I'm here to give a little bit of the educational perspective for the issues that come up with mental health, relative to mental health and student work. So glad to be here.
Okay, Kiran?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I am so happy to be here with you guys today. I am an interior designer. By trade, I have been practicing for approximately 40 years. I started my education in art therapy, which I think has really brought me full circle to where I am today. And I am really enjoying being in the design field, doing mostly corporate work with Design Alternatives, which is the company I started back in 1998. I also run a nonprofit called Angel House International, where we help disadvantaged women. And most recently have started a group of women artists, which is called Women Artists and Coalitions, WAC, for New Jersey. And I'm very excited about that because we will be offering art installations to corporate and healthcare here in New Jersey. So that's it in a nutshell.
Thanks, Karen. Banafsheh.
Hello, and good morning. I'm Banafsheh Soltani. I have a background in both interior design and architecture. I'm with AECOM currently, and I'm a project designer there. I'm very excited to be on this coffee chat and looking forward to our discussion.
Thank you. Jennifer?
Yes, good morning, everyone. I think I'm the only one here that's not an architecture in the design world. I am a licensed clinical social worker and support individuals who are struggling with anxiety, depression, and burnout. And so I am happy to lend my expertise to this panel this morning.
Thanks, Jennifer. And I'm your lovely moderator. And I'm from Donia. I'm actually a sales rep. I do not have an interior design background, Jennifer, so do not feel bad. I have a political science and military background. But still, flooring is in my blood. I come from a long legacy of my dad was an installer. So that's how I connect to this industry. So I represent Atlas Maslin, Chilwich, Lonsdale, Niddry, and Parterre, Zander, and some endless knots. So a little bit of everything. We're an agency, and that's what I do. So let's get started. On the questions that we're going to ask today, a lot has to do with the pandemic. how our life has changed in this world with this unexpected event. So the first question, have you personally adapted to the current job market? How have you adapted with everything going on? Have you guys been doing anything different? Have some of you had a little bit more of an issue than others, or has it just been, you know, just a normal transition for you? Has it been easy?
I guess.
So I don't mind starting. So for
Go ahead.
me, because my company is based in Westchester, Pennsylvania, but I handle predominantly the East Coast, I was working from home prior to the start of the pandemic. So that transition didn't feel, or I didn't think it would feel that complicated. But then my husband started working from home, and now we're two of us doing completely different jobs, trying to share space for the first time. And of course, we've been very fortunate. Transwall has been very fortunate. Times for me are actually busier, which can feel overwhelming, especially while trying to navigate my own feelings and concerns surrounding the pandemic. So it really has been about finding that balance. And for me, that comes from feeling all of the feels and talking about it a lot. I'm a very talkative person. So I try and connect with people as much as I still can. So through, I do weekly virtual dinners with friends that I used to see regularly, even though I think we're all experiencing quite a bit of that Zoom burnout. I still keep pushing it because people are so important to me and the way that I manage stress. And then daily phone calls with my family, my mother, my grandmother, my dad.
I guess I can go next. So the transition for us was between working in the office and taking everything remotely. In one sense, we were already doing that with designing in digital format, digital media, Revit, CAD. We were already doing part of that. However, the part that we get together and collaborate, that was the part that needed a bit more transition. We took that from in-person collaboration to, luckily, a format such as Teams or Zoom allows us to actually still collaborate and present our screen to kind of have collaboration sessions that we get together, we make sure we're all on the same page. We have little charades, so those things still help out a lot, but it was a transition. The first few weeks, it was a bit difficult. It was definitely a transition period, but now we have the hang of it and it's smooth sailing.
Thanks. Thank you. Some of us, I know they're out there, we have designers in the audience and stuff like that, that were laid off, they were furloughed. Their contract was changed from, a part-time position to a full-time position, or just being a consultant. What mental approach have you guys, if any of you have gone through that, what mental approach did you take? Was it something that you had to be like, I'm going to be fine, this is a blessing, or this is, I'm going to adapt and overcome? What type of, how did you react?
So I actually went through that earlier last year, actually. I went through a layoff period. However, I took it as great. This is a new challenge. This is a new opportunity to start something new, to look for a new opportunity. And it turned out a couple of months later, I started a new position. I'm very happy. I think what also helped with that was that I already had a strong networking community around me that also supported me a lot. That meant so much during this time. I've been very active networking for the past 5 years, whether it's organizations such as IIDA, AIA, CoreNet, USGBC, and many others. And those communities kind of reached back to me and helped out throughout the process a lot. So that's one of my notes. If you can network, network.
Would that would that be advice that you would give to like students coming out of college Just,
Absolutely.
right now it's, there's nothing, in the industry that's open. Jobs are, minimal. What type of advice would you give students? Anybody else?
Yeah, I can pick up on that. Networking is absolutely key. And I have to say, we have a student run chapter of IIDA as a student organization. So this has been a great benefit and boon to students, and I try to encourage them all to join. We have a relatively small program, and a number of them do, and it's been phenomenal. I know Banafsheh, that was her entry into the job market as well. But you're right. With respect to the pandemic, it's been tough for students to find internships and jobs. So it has sort of focused their attention on school to a certain degree. And with respect to your earlier question, I mean, if you look at higher education as a kind of job market, it has impacted, and not all in a negative way, how we recruit students. So I know we don't have on-campus tours, or they're just starting to reintroduce those. But for the last year, all students have to have visited the school online, and so we've had to develop recruitment methodologies for getting students to see and encourage them to come. And I have to say, because the job market's been tough, a lot more people have decided to come back to school or try it out. And so we have a rise in applications, which has been terrific for us, at least for the interior design program. But to your earlier point, just to cap it off, is networking is key for getting a job. I mean, I spend a lot of time with my students, helping them write, a good CV, working on portfolios, so that they look good for when they do have chances to get out and interview. So I would say that's essential.
If I may add something to that as well. So in addition to networking, which truly is key, it cannot be replaced. I would encourage you to try unexpected things. Seek out things that you wouldn't normally think of that may be related or totally unrelated to your industry. I graduated in 2009, which was the start of the Great Recession and the housing market collapse, and there were no jobs, and I had a degree in musical theater. So it was terrifying, and I had a ton of bills to pay. So step one, breathe, take a deep breath. It's gonna be okay. And then go out and try things. I often say to myself, this is just my next step. It doesn't have to be my last step. And if this doesn't work, okay, I tried it. I'm going to try something else. So it can be such an opportunity to discover things that you enjoy that you would have never thought about. And it's a really awesome way to look at your desired industry from different perspectives as well.
I think that's really great advice. I would also add, just from the mental health side of things, that doing new things can be scary. And sometimes our anxieties can show up, when we don't want them to, when we might be ready to go into a networking event. Maybe our heart starts beating faster and we don't like those physical sensations. So I just want to be clear that everybody has what I call a worry part. And Brittany, you're absolutely right. It's important to get out there and recognize that worry part's going to show up, and it takes some time while you're not networking and working, to learn some coping strategies. Learn not only deep breathing, but breathe deep into your heart and activate a renewing feeling state. Activate a feeling, a time where you felt peaceful, or think about someone that you care about. And what that does, and we know from science, is that changes your level of coherence. So when you walk into a room, you're coming in from this heart-centered place, which is magnetic to other people. So if you're an introvert, if you have a hard time going up and doing the handshakes during the conversation, sometimes you can let your vibe speak for you. So don't feel like if you're a quieter person that that's not going to work for you. You're speaking through your energy, you're speaking through your body language, and the people that are meant for you will come and find you.
Oh, thank you, Jennifer. That was really nice. It's a great transition to our next question. How can employers and educators provide employees and students with a proper space for their well-being and their mental health? Often designers work overtime for free, 40 hours plus. Students pull all-nighters to complete studio work, which can create burnout. So, other than, yeah, absolutely, breathing is so important. How can we, and as designers who have experience, I know, Kiran, you have an extensive background, like what do you think would be essential for, that type of space?
Yes, I mean, employees, I really think they benefit so much by taking the time, employers for their employees to have a proper space, because you want your employees to feel comfortable and, really be productive when they are working. So I think it's really important that you provide a well-balanced space. And as designers, we're the ones that have to, explain this to our potential people that we're working with, that, we want to see employees make sure that the employees are happy in the space that that they are given. And we know from design, and well-being, that all the things that are important. We know about air quality, we know about ergonomics and acoustics, and density is obviously taking a different backdrop now as far as how dense office space is becoming. It's becoming less and less. And I think one of the things that's really come into play now is the sensory part, that we really want, people to be feeling very protected in their workspace. So the sensory part of it is really a part that I've started to focus on more in this last year. And that really, goes back to your last question of, how did we, I think as designers, we're chameleons. We really just adapt, and we kind of look at, different parts of design and really what needs to be brought out in what times. I've been doing this for 40 years. So really I've had to change, the foundations are always the same, and David can, thank God David's out there teaching. The foundations are so important, because as an employer, sometimes I feel that when I get students, in here, they are missing foundation, and that bothers me. I just think, as when these students are sitting at home and they're waiting for something to happen for them, look at your creative spirit, build something, design it, and put it into your portfolio. I made a coffee table, and this is, it's balancing on one side. How did I get this to do that? I don't know, just sort of like really using your brain to open up that creative part of who you are. So I'm sorry, I went back to the last question.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Like different companies or, facilities, I know NYU has been giving mental health days to their employees. So you get like a day off once a month to just, shut down, no emails, no students, no grading. I'm sure David is familiar with that. And just the people who are running, counters and stuff, just the background of a university that big. It's a corporation. So, but everybody needs a break, right? The students need a break, and so do, but what do you guys think about just employers and stuff like that? Like, what do you think that in our industry is needed?
So I can add on to that. I think the break part is great, but since we no longer have that human connection with our colleagues, building upon those relationships, I know our team, an event that we have is creating a sketch group, where it doesn't have necessarily anything to do with projects, but those who are interested in sketching, which a lot of designers are, we get together, we talk about different styles of sketching, we sketch, we have different topics that we focus on each month. So I think those also help out with taking a break from the work part and those relationships that we build and those times that we are focusing on hobbies, I think that goes a long way as well. And then sometimes it's just the directors and the managers of the group kind of coordinating, hey, let's end the week on a happy hour time or a coffee chat kind of time. Let's get together and recapture what we did during the week, how you're feeling about it, if you're overloaded throughout the week with projects, if you're light for next week, kind of catching up on all of those to make sure everyone's doing well and doing okay. If you don't want someone to have too many projects on their hand that they feel overwhelmed. So those approaches have been very helpful, and I think would be helpful if continued.
And
Those
I
are
can speak to
great, yeah.
the, oh, sorry, go ahead, Jennifer,
Yeah,
please.
I was just going to say that, what everyone's talking about is this idea of things that deplete us and things that renew us. And so it's getting really clear about, what are those aspects in the work environment, whether it's social or environmental, that are draining our inner batteries, and looking to see, well, how can we either pivot this, how can we shift this, or how can we bring this into a more renewing space? Because when we feel positive feelings, when we feel happy to go to work, we feel peaceful at work, we feel supported by, our employees, our employers, we get a boost in our inner battery. And when our inner battery is raising, it increases our capacity to cope when something else happens, when, we have to close the office for a week or we have to pivot in some way. We don't, crumble to the ground. We're able to say, okay, how can I learn from this? What are the resources I have that I can bring to this table, and continually accessing those renewing positive feeling states. So I love that you have that sketch group. I think that's amazing.
From the educational perspective, I can tell you, well, there are two ways to answer the question. One is just generally, I can say that the tenor of the conversations that go on in studio, for example, have slowly changed over the last 20 years, I should say, that I've been in the teaching world. It's moved to one of, maybe many of you remember when you were in school of it being very rigorous, and the kind of comments and criticism were in a tone of much more authoritative and disciplined. And that kind of conversation has changed to one of much more encouragement. Students are, I think there's a new atmosphere within the studio of being much more supportive of what students are about. And this is all to a very good end, actually. I mean, I think it's helped a lot. So I work very hard in my teaching to try to address each individual student and their particular needs. And in the last year, because of the pandemic and the sort of extra stresses that students are under, I've had to slow down my lessons. I've had to extend deadlines. I've become much more accommodating to kind of the extra burdens that are placed on students these days. I can also say that, and this may come up in a question later on, but the boundaries that used to exist between students' personal life and what we see from them in school have been eroded. And I know a lot more about my students' personal lives these days for a couple of reasons. One being they're much more apt to share, given this particular generation. So they're much more comfortable talking about things that we may not be. Secondly, the stigma around mental health challenges, depression and anxiety has been lessened to a great degree. So people are much more acknowledge that that's a very real and present condition for many, many people. And so students are more comfortable talking about it. And that's also a very good thing, but they bring that on the professors. And so I've sort of accepted the fact that I'm not just an educator, I'm also in some respects a mental health counselor in many instances when students come to my office in tears because of something that's happened at home, and they need extra time for the assignment. And so, those sorts of things maybe weren't quite as common 20, 30 years ago. Certainly when I was in school, I would never go to a professor with my own personal problems, but that's much more apt to happen now. And I think we all have conversations about this at school, the professors do, about this being a very present and condition that we need to address. And unfortunately, the school itself, and all schools suffer from this, they don't have enough support in the mental health offices. There just aren't enough people on campus to support all the students that need the help that require it. So
yeah.
Anyway, I'll stop there.
Thanks, David. Well, it's kids, they, like you said, they're a lot more comfortable speaking about their feelings. Older generations, like you said, we weren't raised that way, right? To speak about your feelings. And now employers, I wanted to ask the designers, do you feel like the employers actually, when they ask you to design a space, is it important? Is mental health important when your customers come to you? And do they say, the environment, is it a priority? Is it an interest? Like, has it gone from before they never asked to absolutely, we need like a mental health space, or we need like a quiet room? You know what I mean?
Yes.
Has it changed in design, and has it been a priority for employer, your clients?
Absolutely. I want to say I've really watched that shift in the last 40 years, honestly. Like you're saying, the quiet room and the yoga room but now in the last year, it's even more so. And I feel even the people that are really not just HR, but people that are running these big corporations, they are concerned. And, and I'm sure, we have Jennifer here with us. I'm sure she can attest to this, but I think it's like 1 out of 5 people have some sort of mental, issue that's going on, whether it's, mild, or it's something severe, but that's a lot of people. And, they're all working in companies, and people need to be cognizant of this, and they are. And I have seen a real shift, especially in the last year.
Great.
I can add to that we are getting more end users involved in the design process, so they can also have, whether before it was the owner making a lot of decisions, now it's end users. It's more human-centric design, so that we have the end users influencing what would be best for them, how they would like the layout with their team to be. So I think that is very important nowadays.
Yeah, and have they said to you like mental health is a priority, or the end user?
Yes. They make sure that the mental health aspects are important, because whether it's in-person collaboration, whether it's partial at home, partial in person, all of those come into discussion when we're designing now, or when we're laying out the space, because they want to focus that their employees are in the best environment to be doing their work.
Part of that, so there have been a lot of studies recently, specifically around mental health, predominantly in the workplace. But for one of the things that's always stood out to me is annually it costs globally $1 trillion are lost due to productivity, absenteeism, because of mental health challenges in the workplace. So owners are recognizing this and seeing that they need to support their staff and their employees, not only just to make them a happier, more engaged employee, but even from just a purely financial standpoint. That's a massive dollar amount that they're going through. And it's something, that you can address kind of simply by designing and creating inclusive environments, things that support positive mental health. Something as simple as access to daylight and outdoor views can have massive impacts on the mental health and mental well-being of the average employee.
I see that there are a couple of comments on the chat side. One says, showing up as yourself in an authentic way means feeling safe to bring your perceived flaws along with your strengths into your school and work life. That's wonderfully put. That's great.
Yes. We have another question. We'll leave that to the our question answer portion. We'll get to that at a little bit later. But switching over to obviously COVID has been one of the major factors in which now this is now in the forefront. Mental health is in the forefront of all our lives. And how's that changed designing a space? For instance, the palettes used in the past 12 months. I know that I was reading that now like the trend is going to be for, warm colors, pop of bright. So, what do you guys think? I mean, how has it changed?
I think, honestly, I was saying earlier that we want to make people feel protected. So color, lighting, all those things, forms, they all will play a part. And I still see a lot of, neutral sort of offices, which is great, creates a lot of peace and balance. I think there's a lot of that. I think art is becoming more important. And you always have to deal with sort of the branding of the company that you're working with. So, the branding could be red, and that's maybe not a great color for there. So you have to find ways to balance it. I think it's important these days to really understand color psychology and color theory and understand how to balance this for your clients so they can really make sure that they're not just that their people are productive, but that there is well-being, that there's trust, and there's trust from the employer to the employee. And you want to have the motivation, the collaboration, everything. I think all that, color and lighting and all that will bring that in, and the correct geometric forms within artwork and, all those sort of things. So I think all those things are super important, and more so now than ever. Design is design, design repeats itself, but it just kind of changes, the density changes, we're cognizant of airflow, things of that nature as well.
Thanks.
Kiran, I want to kind of continue on the topic that you mentioned about color. So classes such as color composition that we had when we were in school, I think it goes a long way if there's color psychology next to it. There's some parts of it are absolutely involved in that. Another thing within the workplace, I think flexibility comes into conversation. Yes, we are impacted by COVID and the events of 2020 in our design, but at the same time, we are designing for the time after that, the time post-pandemic. So flexibility is a big part. When a client asks us to design, we want to be flexible with some of our work. We might want to have spaced out workplaces now with higher panels that go surrounding it, but we want to make sure if that is in any way changing 3 years down the line, the opportunity is there. So flexible workplace is now something in discussion. And again, I want to go back to human-centric design. It's all about solving the problems for those who are in that space, using that space.
And do you think you guys are using lighter colors or darker colors? I know the grays and the blacks have been popular. Now since COVID, are you guys do you guys have a brighter palette? Have you seen that your palette has changed at all?
Yes, and I think more balanced. To me, I look at it as balance. you know, because you really just, you want a peaceful environment, but yet there has to be positive stimulation. So that's where that does become super important to really kind of make sure that you're educated on how to do that. It's more important than it ever was.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah, I that's, you know, it's somewhat what the question is. It's like, how are colors applied to design to aid mental health and affect the moods of employees, students, and people in built environments? So I mean, you know, a lot of it has to do with absolutely knowing how colors affect mental health.
And they truly do.
I
They
also
truly
think
do.
there are other visual cues to that are key as well that have changed. So I think the idea of security and safety at least in the commercial institutional spaces, people want to be assured that the spaces that they're in are clean, that they've been disinfected. So things like hand sanitizers on the counter are now an accepted kind of visual aesthetic to spaces. And maybe a lot more of that needs to be integrated into the design as opposed to just tacked on things that we've just quickly solved to address the immediate need. But looking long term, I think our attitudes toward facilities management and the way spaces are maintained will change. You know, the obvious, of course, plexiglass barriers between cashiers and customers, for example. And in the home environment, I think Banafsheh's comment about flexibility is also true. The way we think of home life as being the safe space, you know, where we go for security, has now been disrupted to a certain degree because it's also our workspace and it's also our play space. And we no longer host people there, right? So the hospitality piece of home has changed. And I'm not sure how, it's going to be a while, I feel, before that comes back, before people are comfortable hosting dinner parties with, 10, 12 people in their home. So it'll slowly come back. In the meantime, though, the home environment needs to be designed in a way that supports these multiple new ways of behaving. And you still need your little nook to nestle away and recharge. You still need your bedroom, but the sort of communal spaces need to be adaptable for school children, going to school online while you're working. And that's not going to go away as well. I think there will be a lot more virtual remote work that's going to happen. And so I think home spaces will need to change because of that too.
Yes, absolutely. And it actually takes us to the last question. And because of that, because you're going to be spending more time at home, there's kids, dogs, and you're on Zoom meetings, they're making all the noise, it's changing your space. And what recommendations do you have on work life, student life balance to ensure just a healthy life? Jennifer, what can we do to keep that balance? Keep us sane.
So I get it. I have 3 kids. We're home quarantining now, and that was unexpected. And so I loved the idea of being flexible, because when I think about the different cognitive patterns that we all need to practice right now, that is a big one, versus being rigid and needing, things to be the same every day and having this like exact routine. This time, I think, has been an incredible opportunity for us to really dig into our flexibility and to see how can we adjust? How can we, if this isn't working today, how can I change my child's workspace? How can I move this desk up here? How can I, put in some more toys or come up with 3 different activities? So rather than so another cognitive pattern that we get into when we're struggling is we catastrophize. This is terrible. It's going to be this way forever. We go into this permanence idea. And so I really want to get into this is temporary. When I'm catastrophizing, I'm going to problem solve, because we all have so many unique skills, and I could use all of you in my life to, redesign every space. And so it's relying on those internal resources, but your external resources. Ask for help. If you have a partner, or maybe there's somebody that's been in your bubble. Like I've opened up my world, my kids see their friends, which is probably why we're quarantining right now. But, you know, I was willing to take that risk for their mental well-being. So I would say flexible, be problem solve, acknowledge your inner and outer resources, and speak up. Like say something if you are really struggling. If you're having a bad day, like it's okay to be like, okay, kids, day off. We're not going to do this today. We all need a break. You know, there's no right way to do this during this time. There's only the way that works for you and that allows you to maintain self-compassion for yourself, because this is hard. It's hard.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to take some questions from the chat. The first one is, what are the thoughts about managing little kids' school from home requiring constant attention while you work from home? Working after hours to make up for the lost hours during the day is becoming common, thus leaving parents with little time for themselves.
Yes, exactly. And this is a systemic problem that we're seeing. Like, unfortunately, there isn't a magic bullet. I mean, there are things you can set up different places that they can go to give you a little bit of a break. You can also really look at your boundaries and how you're using your time management. Because sometimes if we just set a timer for 15 minutes, it's like, okay, we're going to do this for 15 minutes. We actually can get like 3 hours of work done when we're really focusing. So I think it's, you know, sometimes a time study, you know, when are the kids occupied? Okay, that's when I'm going to do my work. And I think, again, it's just telling people, like telling your boss. I hope that people have some compassion during this time, especially for moms, because have everything on our shoulders between home, work, you know, our own health. And so I hope that bosses can see that, you know, if you're an employer that's listening, is that, you know, moms are struggling and just having compassion for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the other questions that we have is the new approach to envision the built environment shifted the practices and cultures of these companies, for instance, providing more flexible schedule, take care, you know, support. And in the design approach, do you see that your end users like are asking for that? As you said, human interaction and stuff like that. Has it changed? Do you see it's more a priority?
So I think it's always been there, right? I think we were actually working our way to this point well before the pandemic. I think the pandemic just put it all under a microscope and kind of shoved it to the forefront and made us deal with it in a way that was more pressing and immediate. There has been a shift over, you know, the past 15, 20 years of moving towards human-centric design, moving towards supporting our employee base, inclusivity, diversity. Those are not new buzzwords by any means, but it became more focused because of the pandemic. I think us having to really shift our everydays made us see things from a different perspective and see their importance and kind of focus on them in a way that we just didn't before. It's the same way that we've been reevaluating our relationships at home and reevaluating our relationships with other people. It's just bringing it more into focus than before. And so in the built environment, I think we were always going to be here eventually. I think we might have just sped it up by maybe 5 to 10 years.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think that the COVID definitely made it more acceptable. I think that's a good way to maybe say it, that now employers are saying, yeah, we need to be more flexible. You know, women have children. We need to make sure that they have the support that they need to be able to work from home and also, you know, be productive and give them the tools so they can, you know, make sure their computers are set up properly, make sure they have proper work environments at home. I'm seeing a little bit of that. I'm hoping for more of that. I don't know if the other designers here are seeing more home design where, you know, employers are really taking that into consideration. And I'm hoping that it will be a new trend. I haven't seen it yet in my practice, a little bit, you know, but people are just doing makeshift offices at home, and I think they need everything. They need their sit-stand desks at home. They need proper chairs to sit in if they're going. They need acoustics. They need everything at home, as like they do office.
That was one of the other questions that's one of the panels had asked about COVID. That was there such a push prior to COVID, or is it just now because due to COVID, because our lives have changed, are a little bit more intense? Was there any push for that before? Has COVID really put this mental health on the forefront?
I think so.
Yeah, I think it's normalized it, that of course we're all anxious.
Yeah.
So it's nothing to be ashamed of anymore. We don't have to hide it. You know, we had this huge collective trauma that we all lived through. And with trauma comes mental health symptoms. And so it's important for every single one of us to constantly just notice, where am I at? Where am I at in my mental health? Just like you'd get on the scale, like you weigh yourself, you take your blood pressure. It's the same thing. You want to check your mental temperature and see where you're at, because especially, you know, for us moms and women, we are the thermostat in our homes. And when we are coping well, when we are calm, when we can be in ease, everyone around us benefits from our calm energy. And so taking that time and just with compassion, no judgment. If you're having a bad day, it happens. But there's always another moment. There's always another time to reflect and take care of yourself.
Thanks, Jennifer. That was nice. Everybody take your mental temperature. Let's make that a thing. Definitely.
Well, I love the comment, moms are the thermometers of the, of the home life.
You feel offended, David?
What does that make dads though?
Yeah. When changing the thermostat?
Yeah, we're always trying to adjust it.
I think the other part of the pandemic too, because we've moved to this virtual presence and we're typically in our homes, we're seeing slices of people's lives that maybe we're not privy to before. So we're seeing that we're just as vulnerable as our coworker that we thought was perfect. Our boss doesn't have it together as much as we really thought he or she did. So it's, we've examined ourselves and we've gotten to see other people struggle just as much as we have. And there's some reassurance in that none of us are perfect. None of us are having a good time with any of this. And we're all just doing the best we can together. And that's actually empowering. It's great to not feel so perfect and not have to feel like you're living up to the standard of the person next to you.
It is true, Brittany, that in times of crisis, you tend to look inward, but it also makes you more compassionate too, as you suggest.
Mm-hmm.
And I because I can see more of my students' lives at home by virtue of the fact that they're on Zoom calls, does force me to be more cognizant of what situations they have beyond just the immediate assignment that I have. And I mean, by way of example, just the other day, I had a student who was struggling and coping. I suggested reaching out to the mental health counselors on campus. And she told me, well, I don't want to be diagnosed with a condition because it will allow my mother to have more control over me. And I'm thinking, oh my Lord, you know, what a sad situation. Of course, I had to assure her that everything was in confidence, that her mother didn't need to know about this. Nevertheless, it does sort of bring home every day the kind of reality check of what these students are going through that are above and beyond just getting their homework done.
Yep. And none of this means that this did not exist before. All of this existed, but we're talking about it more. We are more conscious about it. Our friends, our colleagues see it and encourage us to talk about it. So I think as everyone else mentioned, this is pushing us forward. This is we can look at this as an opportunity to better ourselves and better our mental health and do a mental check and just be conscious of each other's struggles, our own struggles, and try to find better ways to resolve them.
Because we are more alike.
Yes.
Than we ever thought.
Absolutely.
Yes. Thank you, guys. I appreciate that. Anybody have any more questions out there? No, let's see.
This was a wonderful conversation. Thank you, Joanna and Matthew, for setting it up. I know I've learned a lot, and I would love to get in contact with everyone on this panel to chat more on it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you for having me. It was lovely to hear the design side of things. My husband's in real estate, so I hear a little bit.
And I really enjoyed listening to the mental side of what's happening. I have to say.
Yeah.
So thank you, guys. It was great.
And yes, and if you need to, yeah, and if you're going through any type of stress and you need some help, please reach out to Jennifer. She put her information on the chat, so don't be afraid.
What's great too, I'm just gonna kind of interject back in here, is this actually had the highest registration, which I think just speaks to the importance of this topic, because the fact that so many people signed up and it was getting so much popularity. I think, again, like Banafsheh said, it's nothing new. It's just, I think, a new light that's been shined on it. So I think there is a lot of relevance on it. And hopefully this is something that we can continue talking about throughout the year in other forms and mediums through IIDA and hopefully other organizations. Hopefully everyone else continues to focus on it. But I appreciate everybody's willingness to jump on. Joanna, I appreciate you moderating today, and I appreciate everyone jumping on and providing all different angles and insights, because we got a little bit of everything. We have the professional side, the education side, even from outside the profession, how people handle it as well. Thank you, guys. So there's another great
Thank
coffee
you.
talk. Thank you, everybody.
Have a
Have
good
a
day.
great day.
Bye.
Take
Have a
care.
great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Great to see you. Bye-bye.